This is the third class in our series on LaRouche's economics. It's going to be led by Mike Campbell on the theme of what is economic value, and it covers chapters 4 through 6 of LaRouche's economics textbook. If you're watching this recorded, please register for the class at larouche.info/classes, and then you'll be able to get access to our forum where there's a discussion on topics raised in the classes, homeworks, things like that, and that you'll be able to make sure that you get reminders about the class every week. So I will say that it was very good to see some discussion from the topics that Cade and Dewey left us with, the questions they left us with at the end of the last class, and you can read more about that on the LaRouche Movement forum. So with that, let's jump right in. Take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Campbell. I'm an electrician from Massachusetts. And yeah, so this is chapters 4 and 5, so you wish to learn all about economics. And it's the definition of economic value, how technology is produced. Before I get started, I was hoping that to get a couple readers. And Daniel, I'm glad you're here. Would you be our LaRouche, Dan?
I would love to, but I have a bedtime I need to take care of here with a couple of kids.
Okay.
Is it at the beginning? I can read something at the beginning.
No. Sure, actually, I'm not. Jason wanted Vernadsky, so I'm gonna give him Vernadsky. I don't think he's emotionally tied to it or anything.
No, it doesn't. I'm open.
Okay, Dan, would you be Vernadsky? Jason, would you be Lynn?
Sure. Where am I reading from?
I will. It'll be up on the slide. I got Michelle for the report for Hamilton, and I believe that's it. Oh no, Shelley. Would anyone like to be Percy Shelley?
I'll be Shelley.
Oh, thank you, Frank.
He is quite a young person, right?
He's a youth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, let me get that.
I do need the text. Is it in the chat?
I will. It'll be on screen.
Okay.
So, everyone can see that, right, and still hear me? Okay. So, what is economic value? Does anyone want to take a stab? Well, let's see what Investopedia says. So economic value is the value a person places on an economic good based on the benefit they derive from the good. It is often estimated based on the person's willingness to pay for the good, typically measured in units of currency. The economic value should not be confused with the market value, which is the market price for a good or service, which can be higher or lower than the economic value that any particular person puts on a good.
Fucking stupid, bro. What is?
So benefit they derive, willingness to pay. I mean, these things are completely subjective, right? I mean, is value completely subjective?
This is kind of ridiculous. I mean, just because a rich person can pay $100 for food and a starving person who only has $10 to pay for food, otherwise they starve to death. I mean, doesn't mean the rich person needs that more than the poor person, right?
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, well, does desire have a physical tie to the value of something?
Not at all. This is tied to basically sentiments, and these sentiments can also be totally changed based on actual. It's even missing the physical economy from it because, for instance, basically my sentiment of wanting to pay more to get a burger is still within this, tied to how much I'd be willing to pay. So it's like, even if it was more expensive, I would still have to pay, but that would somehow make it more sentimentally valuable within this apparatus. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this reading, I heard, you know, the whole beauty is in the eye of the beholder, you know. It's it's exactly what you're saying, but you know, what's possible with it is, you know, is real evil though. But you know, the next question is everything man desires, is it valuable?
Yeah, it says here benefit that they derive, but what does it mean by benefit? It's very vague. Does benefit just means amount of pleasure that someone gets from something? For example, like if someone buys drugs, cocaine with it, is you know, is that benefit? Or is it placing, like, for example, someone going to get a massage for, I don't know, whatever amount of money, the same amount as a person buying that for concrete to build, like, you know, a house or something? I mean, are those both the same benefit? If, like, how do you compare those things, right? It's extremely vague for that.
Yeah.
It's like whatever something is valuable depending on how much someone is willing to sacrifice to get it, to avoid pain or find pleasure within it. That's what like creates something as economically valuable within this apparatus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're basically just leveraging you by your immediate desire, or, you know, pleasure versus pain. Yeah, that's definitely a common, you know, the hedonistic business. You know, but what about taking advantage of a cancer treatment? You know, surely you're willing to pay to save anything to save your own life. I mean, you can't take it with you. You know, but you contrast that with, yeah, like you said, heroin. I mean, heroin addicts, cocaine addicts, surely they're willing to pay out through their nose constantly. So, but what would be the difference between saving a cancer patient and funding a heroin addiction? I mean, is there a difference between the two? One that's, you know, more valuable than the other?
Not according to this to this paragraph here, right?
Another thing that's messed up about this is that it's basically tying economic value to desire. The desirability of something within the instance is what makes something economically valuable. But as we know from psychoanalysis and from Freud and also from LaRouche's Beyond Psychoanalysis, we know like the role that one word you could use is trauma, but I don't know if that really encapsulates it well. But that changes our view of what is desirable and like what our values are. It changes our view of what is desirable. So I just thought that that's interesting that this ties economy to desire, but we know that they basically have us messed up to desire what we know is bad for us, or to, yeah, I don't know.
Well, you know, just keeping with the example, I mean, surely there's a value to keeping someone alive versus, you know, allowing somebody to just commit suicide in public. I mean, and this, you know, the value, I think, lies in keeping a cancer patient alive, for instance. It's in the future good that that person is around to do after the fact. You know, it's not, I mean, I don't think the subjective desire has any, or even the price has any real meaning as far as the value goes. And this should give meaning to the LaRouche quote of, you know, money is stupid. It doesn't know whether it's being spent on a Wall Street whorehouse or a steel mill. But with credit, Hamiltonian credit, value is contained within the future productivity for which it is printed for. So Lynn's construction is on, he starts his construction of, what is good and what is valuable upon Genesis 1 in the Bible. And it's man is given dominion over the earth and every creeping thing that creepeth upon it. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish, and subdue it. This is increasing man's power over nature and increasing potential population density. And it says it is good over and over again. And that's kind of the one thing that I'll give Investopedia is nominally by name, they call these things good, a good or service. And I mean, but the question to ask them is what is the good? What is good about a good or service that deserves value? They submit that it's purely subjective. I hope people got a chance to catch Vernadsky last weekend, who, in 1938 was looking at humanity as an acting force on nature, and we do what might take nature millions of years to do, and we can do so from the flash of an idea. And I think this really gives meaning to potential population density and why it's a good meter. Jason, could you be our Vernadsky?
The creation on our planet of human culture, the creation on our planet of human cultural biogeochemical energy appears to be a fundamental fact of its geological history. The way was prepared in the course of all geological time. The fundamental determining process here is the maximum expression of the human mind. But in essence, this is inextricably linked with the totality of all biogeochemical energy of living matter. The mind can therefore be manifest to the maximum degree only under conditions of the maximum development of the fundamental form of human biogeochemical energy. That is, under the condition of man's maximum degree of reproduction.
I mean, so as a biogeochemical force, he's saying the same thing that Lynn does. And I don't know if it's our translation. The link's right there. I don't think anybody can click it, but Vernadsky, in this article here, he's terming humanity or biogeochemical processes under the under the language of thermodynamics. And he's talking about the same thing Lynn is, which is maximum expression of the human mind under the condition of man's maximum degree of reproduction. So, that's the good. But what about, so back to value and just a normal thing? How can we sort of continue our line of thought? And what's good about eating? What about eating an apple? What's good in that? Like in the cancer patient's medicine, the physical economic value of food is tied to how good the economic process is that food feeds. An apple eaten's true worth lies in the process that it's fueling, that future good. So is there a difference in value if an apple's eaten in Nazi Germany or versus an American revolutionary, or versus Einstein, for instance? Is there a difference in value for an apple eating by a starving person versus an apple that feeds an already well-fed future astronaut? The starving person is certainly willing to pay more, aren't they? But personal desire has no impact on physical value. Not to say the starving person is worthless, but he lives in a world that's throwing him away. So myself, as a goofy example, I mean, I'm not that fond of eating. An apple or any other food has little sway over me as long as I'm fed. But I do think the process I'm a part of could be one of the most valuable on Earth. So it's low desire, but potentially a new paradigm is extremely high value. So likewise, in a healthy economy, the desire for food will be low, people well fed, but the value will continue to increase the more goodly the economic process is. That is, the more negentropic. Even the price of food may come down as production becomes more efficient, but that doesn't lower the value. The value keeps growing. So how can we have a negentropic or an anti-entropic economy with increasing potential population density growing? Last week, Cade and Dewey showed an economy can never stay stagnant, or else entropy takes over with resource depletion and diminishing returns to its increases in labor. But what groups like the Club of Rome and the climate alarmists leave out is technological progress. So how can we optimize not just our growth rate, but also the rate in which we grow? In terms of a thermodynamic process, given the energy of a system, the total input to keep a machine going, how can we spend the free energy our machine produces to ensure a continued economic growth? I'm going to show you how Lyndon LaRouche would take inventory of an economy, and then we'll take a brief look at the current state of our own labor force. So, since we're measuring increases in potential population density, we'll begin with population as our base, and households are the reproductive unit of population. He breaks down the population by productive age and mode of employment, agricultural versus productive operatives versus overhead. And he categorizes the productive powers and the energy in the system and the free energy as so. So we have V. It starts with V, the households, the portion of total physical goods output required by households of productive workers. D is the total overhead expense. And he breaks this down into 3 different overhead types: economic, institutional, and waste. Economic is directly related to the economic process. It's your scientific research, your medical, education, production supervisors, transportation. Institutional is your government, clerks, and judges. Waste, borderline unskilled, semi-skilled, and highly labor-intensive modes of employment. And also, waste is definitely financial usury and speculation, whole Wall Street scheme, prostitution. But although financial administration for public loans, say, is definitely institutional. I mean, healthy banking. You got C, which is capital goods consumed by production of physical goods. It includes the cost of maintenance of infrastructure, plants, machinery, and materials in process. But only the capital goods required as energy of the system and not waste. So C and V are your main drivers. You got the people and you got the tools they're working with in the productive process. S is the gross operating profit. It'd be your total physical goods output less the input of C and V. S prime, that's your net operating profit. That's your gross operating profit minus the overhead. So what's left, and that's free energy for investment. So now I'm going to ask you guys, for me, it would help me learn the variables just to continue on to actually place some of these jobs. So I'm going to ask you guys to sort of participate and tell me where these things would go. So where would mining and logging be placed? What part of the economic process?
Would that be in C?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Definitely. It's definitely a capital good. It's definitely a material and process. How about education?
I could probably answer the whole thing, but I've read the book, so.
I know you probably could. Anyone else? The quicker you do it, the quicker you guys get rid of me. I already said it in the definition. Education's overhead, and it's economic. Federal government, it's institutional overhead. Manufacturing, Frank.
That would be V, that would be production required by households, but I guess it could also be in capital goods if it's like intermediate manufacturing.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it depends on what the good is going towards. I mean, if it's going towards a household good, then that'll be in B, right? But if it's going towards, you know, an input in making an engine, then it will be C. What about the transportation of goods? You have a guess? It's economic institution. It's not it's not actually in C like I thought it was. But anyway, so I went on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. These are all from there, and I looked at the current labor force, and I checked out and I classified this the best I could to just get an overview of what our labor force is actually doing in the States. And it's not complete at all. I mean, it's only a glance, and it doesn't include the value of the goods we're producing. I mean, these jobs could all be for widgets for hanging your ski pass on your coat, or could all be paper straws, you know. As far as C goes, I was as generous as I could be in placing people in C. I mean, it was very, very sad. And another thing to mention is all these positions, they include the direct supervisors. So you'd have to change, you know, you'd have to shave a couple thousand off of each one, or a couple million off of each one, as economic overhead. Also, this depends on, you know, like Frank said, you know, what we're constructing. It will conduct, you know, what's actually being placed. Another, you'd have to cross-reference this with the goods that we're actually producing and where they're going. Because I mean, if it's a house, then it's V, but if it's a railway, it's C. But if it's a skyscraper for a financial institution, I mean, that's institutional overhead at best. In the overhead column, technically financial administration is institutional overhead if it's not completely usurious or speculative. But I dumped them all in waste. You know, retail and wholesale trade was a toss up. You know, Lynn says it's labor intensive, unskilled, and semi-skilled. You know, that could be institutional or even waste. But some of it's definitely economic overhead, akin to like something like transportation, you know, getting goods to people. So what's the overview look like? The total in the population in the productive workforce is only like 15% of the workforce. Total overhead, 80% of the workforce. This is just an overhead cost, unproductive overhead. Well, 1/3 of that is potentially economic waste. What does Lynn say? Where things should be? LaRouche recommends that 50% of the workforce be located in the productive sector. 5% of the labor force should be dedicated to science, research, and development. He says that V should always be rising. Well, that's another question, is where's V on this? I mean, there was no way to place V because there was no way of telling where these goods are going. And the way this thing is organized, the way they categorize the labor is under a completely foreign idea to me. Like science and R&D was under professional and business services. They're the 8,000 that I put in economic. But that's also it's paired with business administrators and waste management services, which is trash men, which is, unskilled, heavy labor intensive work. It's basically waste. And so what's their mode of thinking here? Is that how they think of of scientific discovery? Is that once you get an update and discovery, then you get to throw out and cannibalize all the companies that aren't using this new discovery? And that's what the job of the business administrators and the waste management people, they all have in common. They all take out the trash. I mean, it's ridiculous. So anyway, Lynn says that V should always be rising, and the cost of V should decrease. And
Sorry, Mike, I have a question regarding the previous slide before you completely move on.
What do you got?
Yeah, where is the V section in this? Because you have the C, which is 15%, and then you have the overhead, which is 80%. So are the remaining 5%? Actually, I think you kind of encompass the rest of it in the bottom left of it there. So where is V?
Well, like I said, this needs when you're doing statistics, the way we do it, at least with the labor, isn't organized towards Lynn's idea at all. You really can't derive a V from this. You don't know what's being constructed. You don't know what those utilities are powering or what's being manufactured. So yeah, there's really no way of telling. I mean, like I said, one thing I could have done is look at the goods produced, cross-reference that with this. But then again, I mean, just like money, lumber is stupid. It doesn't know where it's being built.
So what you're saying is that C plus V is 15%.
Yes, C plus V is 15%. Your productive sector, I would say, is 15%.
Okay, so your entire C plus V is 15%, and everything else is 80%.
And that's really being generous, like I said, because you don't know what these things are actually powering, and information actually should only partly be there. Part of that is data. Part of that is data and running Ethernet cable and phone lines, but most of that is television.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Netflix and all that, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really our productive sector is really overcumbered here. But what a healthy economy should look like in Lynn's idea is V should always be rising, but the cost of V should decrease. And this shows a rising quality of life, but better yet, the quality of the household members themselves should be rising. Your capital goods sector should rise faster than V. So that capital intensity, or the use of machine tools and infrastructure, etc., should be increasing. Productivity, which is your gross profit over to production ratio, should rise, and it should rise faster than the expense to production ratio. So the question that I have is, what do you do with your S prime to make this actually happen? To make V and C rise, capital intensity rise, your productivity rise? Where do you invest this S prime? Anyone have any guesses? mean,
like new forms of energy that can sustain our economy at like a higher flux density.
yeah. I mean, how would you produce the new energy, or how would you make that happen that you could invest in?
I guess that would be like investing in like research and development,
Yeah, that
like tech sectors or STEM sectors.
Mhm.
Primarily, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's anyone else?
Well, if you remember from my class, there's well, I think it's also from the following classes. There's capital intensity and energy flux density, and energy flux density would entail new research, development of new technologies and scientific principles, and capital intensity, increasing that would be more investment into C category of capital goods. So I think it would be split up between overhead and C capital goods production.
Yeah, because once you make a discovery, how do you translate that into the rest of the economy? I mean, one hypothesis could, well, my example or great example of that would be the Tennessee Valley Authority, right? Which it took a backwards part of America, a place that was malaria ridden, soil was constantly being washed away, and gave the local population a mission to create a series of dams, locks, and power plants to unify the Tennessee Valley, the Tennessee River as a resource. And this ended up being an area where they experimented on splitting the atom during the Manhattan Project, because it was very energy dense here. And this all stemmed from a poverty alleviation program from the FDR recovery. And Hamilton, right? Hamilton, the same ideas here, and this leads us to where Ashley was. Michelle, are you with us? Would you be our Hamilton?
Yeah. From the report on the subject of manufactures. An extension of the use of machinery. A man occupied on a single, sorry, your head got in the middle of the text. Okay, a man occupied on a single object will have it more in his power and will be naturally led to exert in his imagination in devising methods to facilitate and abridge labor than if he were perplexed by a variety of independent and dissimilar operations. Besides this, the fabrication of machines in numerous instances becoming itself a distinct trade. The artist who follows it has all the advantages which have been enumerated for improvement in his particular art. And in both ways, the invention and application of machinery are extended. And from these causes united, the effect of augmenting the productive powers of labor.
Thanks. So Hamilton elaborates on the machine tool principle. It frees people up to use their imagination to create not only new methods to produce, but create entirely new machine tools. These are the ideas of a dignified and uplifted man. But where do ideas come from, and how are they used to change the world? So this gets at the definition for economic value that Lynn gives. It is through the transmission of negentropy by the activity of operatives, which is the substance of economic value. The transmission of negentropy through the labor operatives is the transmission of ideas, in Plato's sense of species. New machine tools and the potential for stronger platforms of infrastructure are only possible through these new discoveries, principle, and the transmission of these ideas through the economy. It starts with each one of us and our ability to discover and enter these ideas into the economy, pass it on. And so that brings us to Plato's hypothesis. I always love that word because it reminds me of the 8th grade science fair, and I won that shit. But this is the most touched upon subject in the Socratic dialogues. And I'll just define them roughly. Or define the first two. So simple hypothesis is when an existing body of knowledge or opinion is applied, logical deduction, and it's operating on an underlying assumption or prevailing opinion, an axiom. So an example would be believing that the universe is entropic and cooling logically concludes that we need to cut back and depopulate. Higher hypothesis, where the authority of some existing doctrine is overthrown. Simple hypothesis is overthrown. All the logical and hereditary implications of the doctrine must be discarded and reconstructed on the basis of the newly proven principle. Lynn says this is the lowest possible level of creative scientific thought or discovery. Simple hypothesis can only expand an already existing discovery. Higher hypothesis, like when a new energy source revolutionizes your economy, makes what was once impossible now possible. And hypothesis of the higher hypothesis, or hypothesizing the higher hypothesis. Lynn says that no willfully directed fundamental discovery can be accomplished except by consciously self-disciplining one's mental life according to the sense of a principle corresponding to an hypothesis of the higher hypothesis.
Wait, I had a question on that last part. I don't really understand this final hypothesis of the higher hypothesis.
Okay. I'll elaborate a little. I'm not. There's not a definition there for a reason, and
Okay.
I'm going to show. How Lynn suggests it to be done.
Okay.
Given a rough definition, but if you tell me what's on your mind.
Well, yeah. If we're gonna go into how it's done, I think that would be helpful then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Would you be? Is Daniel with us, or does anyone want to be Lynn? This is a footnote from the text.
I can read
Can y'all
it.
hear me? Okay.
And get the oldest person in the call to do it.
Anyone, please. All I've been doing is talking.
I can do it. On the use of language, the putatively literate use of the English language had already fallen way below the quality of literate English during Shakespeare's and Milton's time during the 1950s, before the destructive impacts of the Chomskyan linguistics and the argot of the rock drug counterculture. The principal among defects to be noted include the disuse of the subjunctive and philosophical nominalism in manner of emphasis upon the noun as the natural unit of ideas. The first is the outgrowth of a steady campaign to eradicate the use of the subjunctive by academics who recognized quite accurately the practical philosophical significance of the subjunctive as the medium for thinking in terms of scientific hypothesis. The emphasis upon the noun was also the fruit of campaigns on behalf of philosophical empiricism.
So I guess he's pointing to two tools that that help get from simple hypothesis to the higher hypothesis. This is the method of thinking that has been taken away from us. Right? And so first is the subjunctive, right? And it's my example of it is in Hamlet's third act soliloquy, and it takes place in the subjunctive mood, which is purposefully awkward. It's living in a question, like a what if tense, and it's living in sort of an uncertainty, and yeah, that's the best I can do. I'm not going to pretend to be professional on it. But Hamlet, what he's asking himself is if it's better to do what he has been called to do and challenge the status quo, or to remain and suffer the devil he knows, to be or not to be. His father was murdered by his uncle. His uncle is now married to his mother, and he's toying with the idea of killing his uncle as the first step in a campaign to save Denmark. And as a treat, I got Lynn actually reciting this.
I can't really hear it. It's really quiet.
Oh, hold on. I know why. Hold on. 2 seconds. Screen's back up.
To be.
You can hear that now, right? Oh, shit.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks the flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he might himself his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fathers bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all. And thus, the native hue of resolution is sickly ore with a pale cast of thought. And Epicry prizes of great pith and moment. With this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action.
So he doesn't go through with it, and it all ends in tragedy, but I bring it up here because he has the chance to overthrow the current hypothesis and set his country right. So he's in the subjunctive. And I also like it because, or I also used it because towards the end, the puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others we know not of. Thus conscious does make cowards of us all. Lose the currents turn awry and lose the name of action. I mean, personally, I think Hamlet's too arrogant to recognize his own impending death if he doesn't change. And it's the fear of dying during the change which paralyzes him. But at the same time, natural law is crying out in him and he doesn't know what to do. And I call that paralysis and analysis. It happens to be all the time. So in that footnote as well, Lynn also attacks nominalism. And that's directly related to economic value. Like nouns versus verbs. Any noun, a tool, a boat, machines we use, 600 kilometer an hour train that transports goods. These things are all meaningless without the process that it is a part of, that they're a part of. What if we stop making goods to transport? What's that train worth? The nouns, the clothes people wear, their car, their activities, their likes on the web, all these nominal possessions don't define them. But now we can say why. Whether they are temporary and valueless when detached from the process of good that created them. I say this because this is a personal and very much an inside job of development to get and stay connected. We have a republic if we can keep it. We have possession of a republic. Built the nation, we have the first nation built on principles. But what is that going to mean 50 years from now? So this question is from the November 5th EIR press release, and these answers are 100% true, and I've used them as talking points to people all the time. And the question is, explain the root cause of the US proxy war in Ukraine in 60 seconds or less. And once Gorbachev was assured NATO would not move 1 inch to the east back in the 90s. The 2014 coup in Ukraine. Hubris, arrogance, ignorance, greed, sustainment of the American singularity, an already collapsing Western financial system, which is being abandoned and replaced by the BRICS Plus, right? But what's the difference between those and Helga's?
I think it is a larger issue because I think we are really experiencing an epochal change. This is the epoch of the
I don't think we can see the video. I can't see the video on my screen.
There's no video.
Yeah, but we can see the audio.
Okay, good.
We can hear the audio, yeah.
I would love to make a clip of this if we want to put some video to it. But hold on.
And the oligarchical system which erupted in the 15th century when the nation state first emerged. In 600 years, this fight has been ongoing, and now we come to the end of that because now the fight is between those who want to maintain the colonial order and keep the majority of nations in colonial dependency, and the rising nations of the global south who want to end that order. And I think that that is the larger issue in which even the Ukraine issue and NATO are just ephemerals.
So these are mostly facts some of them, could be translated into verbs like sustainment of the American singularity. But what Helga brought up was an ongoing universal process. I mean, I like Scott Ritter's answers, the hubris, American hegemony answer. Hubris is a principle, but it's still a noun. Facts produce a form of simple hypothesis. They are nouns that we can possess. And the last thing that really struck me was, Helga said that the Ukraine issue and NATO are just ephemerals. They're temporary in a larger process. I mean, will the United States be as well? And just to further this point of transitive verbs, is, Kepler, who discovered universal gravitation. He didn't just say the planets would be here or there on such and such a night. He didn't say that they are moving in an ellipse and not in a circle. But he first asked, why is this so and not otherwise? He was hypothesizing the higher hypothesis, and in resolve said, gravitation conducts the planets in harmony across the night sky. So it's action, that's the primary substance. And I just want to end with a Shelley quote, which I think people who have read So You Wish should check out Defense of Poetry. And it's a Revolutionary War time poet, and Lynn's economics, you could see it there throughout the entire throughout the dialogue that he has, or the construction that he makes. And yeah, so this is how I'll conclude. But the functions of the poetic faculty are twofold. By one, it creates new materials of knowledge and power and pleasure. By the other, it engenders in the mind a desire to reproduce and arrange them according to a certain rhythm and order, which may be called the beautiful and the good. The cultivation of poetry is never more to be desired than at periods when, from an excess of the selfish and calculating principle, the accumulation of the materials of external life exceed the quantity of the power of assimilating them to the internal laws of human nature. The body has then become too unwieldy for that which animates it. How's that for an economic statement? That's what I got for you tonight. I clocked myself at doing this in 35 minutes earlier.
Are you waiting for questions?
Yeah.
I thought I was supposed to read Shelley.
Yeah, that I'd prefer that actually.
Okay.
We could hear it again.
If that's yeah, I mean, I suppose I could say it again if people would be okay with that.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Frank. I didn't write your name in. It's kind of last minute.
Let Frank read.
Okay, hold on.
Okay. The functions of the poetical faculty are twofold. By one, it creates new materials of knowledge and power and pleasure. By the other, it engenders in the mind a desire to reproduce and arrange them according to a certain rhythm and order, which may be called the beautiful and the good. The cultivation of poetry is never more to be desired than at periods when, from an excess of the selfish and calculating principle, the accumulation of the materials of external life exceed the quantity of the power of assimilating them to the eternal laws of human nature. The body has then become too unwieldy for that which animates it. All right, then I guess the question for Mike here is, what does this passage mean?
Oh, geez. Well, Lynn does it from the standpoint of, transitive verbs or nouns are actually created by verbs instead of the other way around, which is what Aristotle said. You start with the properties and you build from there, kind of like Euclid's properties. But with Lynn, the verbs came first, and the verbs created the nouns. But with Shelley starts with musicality as in the production of language, but they're talking about the same thing, and it's the transmission of ideas. It creates new materials of knowledge and power and pleasure. And they arrange them with the beautiful and the good. Right? That's the purpose of, that's how this transmission of ideas works, which is actual economic value, right? That's what's going to raise potential population density. And then he turns around and he slams. This whole thing is there's a footnote against Bentham. He calls out Locke, Hume, and Mill by name. And it's a polemic against these guys and this whole British system. That's where the body has become too unwieldy for that which animates it and comes from. He's polemicizing against this. But if you read that, it's talking about the same thing. It's this poetic principle as a universal process that has developed man and is the substance and driver for the economic process for human economy.